Hello and welcome to the Free Zone. Well, hopefully we will be able to stay a free zone. Hopefully we will be able to continue to monitor this world, report what we see, and allow everything to come out. Hopefully we won't be chased down by pre-crime, seeking out social media networks trying to mark us as domestic terrorists. I can't even imagine. We're sitting in a place of Trump derangement syndrome, and there's very little room to maneuver in discussions. So I figured I'd pull out the big guns today and bring back the wonderful Johnny CIRUCCI, author of Illuminati Unmasked, Secret History, and Eaters of Children. It's going to be a good show. Get over to johnnycirucci.com to get deeper into this. You guys want these books. If you had read Eaters of the Children before this Epstein thing, you would be so loaded with information you wouldn't know what to do. So check out johnnycirucci.com and please welcome him to the Free Zone.
Freeman, I'm so excited to be back, man. We brought the big guns today, brother. We brought the big guns right off the bat, man. I'm smiling ear to ear. Pre-crime, we're going to protect you from pre-crime and that great Tom Cruise movie Minority Report back in 2002. Tom Cruise, a secret member of the Colonna family. Colonna should be a name that comes up when you look up who really controls from behind the scenes. Should be Colonna, Borgia, Medici, Aldo Bandini. These are the real names that instead of Rockefeller and Rothschild that should be coming up, but they have all the power. They have erased themselves. They don't want to be seen. So we are going to bring them out today, brother. And Donald Trump, we can start with Donald Trump and Trump derangement syndrome. Trump's job, I'll tell you, man, it was either or. The machine was going to win in Trump versus Hillary Clinton. They always win. That's why you only have two quote-unquote choices every presidential election. They have it completely narrowed down so that no matter who it is you think you're picking, the machine still wins and you still slip towards tyranny and slavery. But in this case, I think the machine really needed Donald Trump to win because things are ratcheting up. Now, Donald Trump's job for all those good right-minded people and conservatives out there who think that Donald Trump is an outsider and he's a white knight and he's only being held back by the deep state. If it weren't for that darn deep state, Donald Trump would be kicking butt and bringing in pedophiles and building that wall. And no, folks, no. His job is to be a court jester, to be foolish, to be divisive. And that's why he was picked. He was trained by the Jesuits for 2 years at Fordham and transferred over to the so-called secular University of Pennsylvania. And I've got inside information that the Jesuits control there in secret. Donald Trump's job is to be divisive and get nothing done. And it was the same as Barack Obama before him. Even less divisive, just to really get nothing done. It's amazing how between the two parties there are really no differences in policy. During the Obama administration, those on the left were just devastated at how the so-called global war on terror just kept on going, harder and faster, more money, more bodies. Meanwhile, you have people profiting off of the war on terror, like Eric Prince, devout Roman Catholic, Knight of Malta, the ubiquitous founder of Blackwater, whose sister, Catherine DeVos, I believe is her name, is our Secretary of Education. So this is just full on. Let me turn off one of my peripherals here. This is the web. This is the matrix that goes on. And I'm going to explain all this, Jesuits and all this stuff, and give the answers to who is really in control and what this all means. This is why when people ask questions, if they should dare to come to Freeman Fly, it's because they're asking questions. It's because they no longer trust mainstream media. They no longer trust the government. At some point, they said, wait a minute, that's not right. That's not accurate. I know for a fact that that's not truthful. And as soon as you realize you've been lied to, Freeman, you become a conspiracy theorist. You get laughed at. because that's part of the way they keep you on the plantation. Don't stand up. Don't ask questions. And this is an ancient matrix of control. It goes back since the dawn of civilization. It received tremendous power in the Roman Empire. But something changed with the Roman Empire. As the Roman Empire stagnated and fell apart, the military Roman Empire gave way to a religious Roman Empire. And it goes on to this very day. And I'm a Christian. I'll give a very quick summary biography of me. So people are like, who the heck is this Johnny CIRUCCI? I spent 20 years in the military, in the Army and the Marine Corps. And some of that time was in Iraq, as we say, outside the wire, outside the green zone. So been there, done that. And I, born and raised Italian Roman Catholic, obviously with a name like Giovanni Agostino CIRUCCI. You're going to have that kind of a background. Very rare if you don't. Sometimes it's more of a way of living than it is an actual religion, especially for any number of different ethnicities. French, Italian, Portuguese, Hispanic of any way, Irish especially, Polish too, across the board. It's just a way of living more than it is a faith oftentimes. And with right-minded values, and that's what put me towards the military. So listening to so-called conservative media growing up and as an adult, plugged into that, being very frustrated. Well, I'll tell you, it was my experiences in the military and really the advent of Reagan, Bush, but especially the Obama administration, Clinton, of course, and Waco, World Trade Center 1 in 1993. But really it was my experience overseas in Iraq and with the Obama administration that caused some radical changes. I had always been writing and blogging since college. I wrote for the university newspaper and blogging since then, way back in the 90s. So I had this mindset, especially being a conservative Catholic at that time. I converted to Christianity, became a born-again Christian in 1996, but with right-minded values. So really into all the typical, I'm sure it's okay to say the names, Rush Limbaugh and Mark Levin and Michael Savage and all those guys. I got really upset with the advent of 9/11, the war on terror, and then after that, the Obama administration. It really seemed like these people were no different than mainstream media. They were mainstream media. They're just mainstream media with a right-wing spin. I was getting really upset that I wasn't getting information. I felt like I was still getting lied to, and I wanted to dig deeper. And I'll tell you, what tore it for me was the advent of the Obama administration, where I knew Barack Obama had a dark past, a secret history, as it were, not to quote the title of my second book, but that for some reason the talking heads on the right weren't getting into. I was like, well, why is that? That's odd. And I kept coming across these terms. At the time, it was more Illuminati than it was deep state, but Satanists also came up. They were nebulous terms, Freeman, nebulous terms. Illuminati in particular was a nebulous term 5, 6, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, even 10 years ago, where you could throw that out to scare people and it doesn't tell them anything. And I wanted to dig deeper, and I did. And I looked into that. And by the way, real quick, to the culmination of my wake-up where I walked away from so-called conservative media was the death of Osama bin Laden in 2011, which I knew was an absolute farce. I had open source information and inside information from within the military that raid was not what it was purported to be. I mean, open source information, they admitted that what was the name of the critical room, control room, whatever that picture when they had all of Obama and Gates and Hillary with her hand over her mouth, completely staged, admitted by mainstream media to be completely staged. The pictures of Osama bin Laden with his face bloody, admitted to be staged. Leon Panetta, Jesuit-trained Roman Catholic, admitted that there was no live feed. They were faking the so-called live feed from the raid. So I knew at that point that there was something really wrong, and I sure couldn't go even to so-called conservative, and they don't count as alternative media. They're still mainstream media. Started to dig for myself, and I'll tell you what really woke me up and precipitated my first book, Illuminati Unmasked, was looking up the word Illuminati. And as you dig a little bit into it, you may come across Adam Weishaupt having some Jewish roots. Well, maybe it was a Jewish conspiracy. But then you realize that the Weishaupt family were converted to, conversos converted to Catholicism, and Adam Weishaupt, who founded the Illuminati, spent his entire life with Jesuits, starting at 7 years old, all the way through to becoming a professor himself. And I've seen some sources say that he was a secretly ordained Jesuit priest himself. Now, when I say Jesuit, and I'll explain what a Jesuit is shortly. When I say Jesuit, I mean ordained. I mean went through the process, is a Roman Catholic priest of the Society of Jesus, the so-called Society of Jesus. And I've seen sources that say that's what Adam Weishaupt was. One thing is an acknowledged fact is he was Jesuit trained from a very young age. I think it's co-founder of the Jesuits, Francis Xavier, that said, give me a child from 7 and I'll give you the man, which means we indoctrinate from a very young age. They're owned. They are owned by the Jesuit and the Roman Catholic agenda. And this dawned on me. Why is it that if someone says the word Illuminati, they're not all simultaneously saying the word Jesuit? That no one was. Meanwhile, this was the very foundation of the Illuminati. The Jesuits were so in trouble that in 1773 they were disbanded by the Pope. But Clement, I'd say it was it Clement? It was Clement VI and Clement VII. Clement VI died, I believe. I got to keep all my popes straight because 2 popes were involved with the disbanding of the Jesuits, and 2 more were involved with them coming back. But they were disbanded in 1773, and it was in May 1st of 1776, just shortly before Independence Day in the colonies, that the Illuminati were founded. May Day, on a day that is supposedly very important to communism. How it is that anybody could say anything about the so-called Illuminati and not immediately follow up Adam Weishaupt and immediately follow up behind that Jesuit, it was shocking. It was absolutely shocking. So I took about to throw together names, places, and dates, and that became my first book, Illuminati Unmasked. And as I dug deeper, Freeman, I was really, really shocked and surprised to see just how powerful the Roman Catholic Church is to this very day. And we all had kind of a nebulous idea. Yeah, the Catholic Church was important back in the day, but they're just, they just sideline. They're just a stuffed shirt religion, and the Pope will pop up every once in a while. And I guess this new Jesuit Pope pop up and make people angry with his left-wing ideology, and that's it. And then they go away, and you go every once in a while, you have somebody important will kiss his ring, and then they leave. No, man, it's through this very day, from the beginning, from roughly 500 AD, 538 AD, when Emperor Justinian recognized the Bishop of Rome as Bishop of Bishops and Corrector of Heretics, all the way through to today, man. It is the Catholic Church that kings bowed to for any little move. I mean, there's just so many different rabbit holes of history that we can go down to. I think one of the easiest ones to point that out would be Henry VIII and what it happened to Henry VIII and why it was that he broke, in air quotes, broke with the Catholic Church. Henry, before that, was a hyper-devout Roman Catholic. Hyper-devout. This is right after Martin Luther's protest in 1517. We go down that road too if we wanted to, where he responded to Martin Luther. Martin Luther's 95 Theses against Rome and indulgences, and the Medici Pope in Rome, a different Medici Pope at the time of Henry's break, was Giovanni, was Leo X at the time in 1517, and later in the 1540s, it was a different Medici. How it is that the name Medici doesn't pop up anytime you look up who rules the world from behind the scenes. Just amazing control. Well, it's not really amazing because Google was born on the same day that the Jesuits were consecrated, September 27th. But the Catholic Church was so powerful all the way through, like I said, from 538, Justinian recognizing the Bishop of Rome as Bishop of Bishops, all the way through to today. And a great example is Henry VIII, who, these royals and these elites like to interbreed and intermarry so that they can hang on to their power, because that's what's most important to them, is feudalism. And by the way, that's what the Catholic Church wants and is pushing for, and almost has tyrannical feudalism to this day in every single so-called Western democracy. We're there. We're already there in a very hierarchical feudal state. That's what the Catholic Church wants, and that's what the Catholic Church is about to get very soon. We're very close to that. The great example is Henry VIII and how he was married to Catherine of Aragon, a Spanish devout Roman Catholic princess. And the problem was Catherine was not delivering any male heirs. And boy, if there was one thing that Henry wanted, it was this pipe dream of immortality and having his male offspring rule over England forever and ever. And that's every king, every queen. That's all they want. They want power. They want to maintain power. And shockingly, sickeningly, it is the Catholic Church that delivers this to them, whether they show it overtly or covertly. And the whole reason why Henry broke with Rome is because the Medici Pope at the time, Giuliano, refused to allow Henry to have his marriage to Catherine annulled, because Catherine was I think she was the daughter of Isabella and Ferdinand, who were hyper devout Roman Catholics. Hyper devout. They couldn't burn Protestants fast enough in Spain. Couldn't burn them fast enough. And so the Medici Pope, the last thing he was going to do was upset them, his very powerful base in Spain, by allowing Henry to divorce his wife simply because she had only given one daughter, Mary. And so Henry supposedly broke with Rome and created a miniature Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, which is so similar to Rome in every facet, whether it's the vestments or the traditions, vicar versus priest, no different, only in name only. And this is because it had nothing to do with faith and a desire to revert back to traditional biblical Christianity. It was a matter of control and power. And that's what Henry did. And to this very day, the Anglican Communion is basically the little sister of the Catholic Church. So much so that not too long ago, I love telling this story of the Anglican vicar who was caught, I believe in London, drunk early morning by police and paramedics. And as they were trying to attend to this guy, I think his name is Gareth Jones, he said something like, "F you, I have diplomatic immunity. I'm with the Vatican." And this was an Anglican minister. Great story, and it's buried. It's been buried, but it's so true. Every year, the Archbishop of Canterbury, which is supposedly the top prelate in the Church of England, goes and kisses the ring. Rowan Williams. I got a great picture of Rowan Williams from several years back kissing the ring of John Paul II. It really is. It just proves it and shows through time how the Catholic Church has always been secretly in charge. And so who is it that is leading the charge for the Catholic Church? Well, this kind of traces back to the whole Martin Luther issue. And maybe even a little bit further back, you've got as traditional Christendom, and as I said, I'm a born-again Christian. That's my bias. I hope not to alienate anybody by it. But this is history. So this is information for everybody, a broad audience. Very proud of my dear Muslim friend that I have on Twitter that is also very in tune to these issues. Goes back to the founding of Christianity with Jesus of Nazareth, and what us Christians believe, that he was the Son of God, and on his he nailed on the cross all religion, even the God-breathed religion of Judaism, put it to death on the cross. And we Christians believe that by faith and by a living relationship with Jesus Christ, you have eternal paradise, eternal peace, and peace in this world and paradise in the next, and wiped out this intricate religion that was, we believe, God breathed through Yahweh to the Jewish people in preparation for the advent of this Messiah, Jesus of Nazareth. And that's the whole point. In roughly 32, 33 AD, our calendar's so messed up thanks to the Jesuits who created our modern Gregorian calendar. And that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But it was the death of religion as fundamentalist Christians believe. But the problem was control. And this is one of the reasons why Jesus upset so many people in his day, particularly Jewish leadership, is religion is power. Freeman, religion is power. It's control. In fact, there's no greater control over someone than when they believe their very soul depends upon their loyalty to that religion. And it'll make you do some crazy things, evil things. It'll twist it around so that you think you're doing good, you're saving your soul, and in actuality, it's really, really evil. And there may be some supposed examples of suicidal Muslims, but that most of that is a farce. Most of that is created by modern Western intelligence. There's no such thing as Islamic terror. Oh my goodness, who's Snowden's journalist? There. Oh my goodness, I can't remember his name. Oh, let me pull it up real quick. It is Snowden. It is Glenn Greenwald. Why would I not remember that? Glenn Greenwald has what likes to say. And by the way, Glenn Greenwald also very, very controlled opposition as a both homosexual and Jewish and journalism, thoroughly controlled. But he's got a great line. So something like wherever you discover a domestic terror plot of a domestic terror cell of 3 Muslims, 2 of them are FBI agents. Well, that's true, and that's or 2 of them are CIA agents. It's absolutely true, and this goes back to who's really in control and why. And so this is back to religion. And one of the reasons why Jesus Christ created so much stir is that he said, look, as far as faith goes, you just need me. You don't need a priest. You don't need ritual. You don't need to go through this hierarchy. You don't need to spend money every year. You don't need to have sacrifices. You don't need to do a pilgrimage, even though this was God-breathed, the way Jews and Christians believe God-breathed to Judaism. You don't need to do a pilgrimage every year to sacrifice for the sins of your family. All you need is me. It's absolutely revolutionary. Too revolutionary, unfortunately, for the time. One of the reasons why Jewish leadership had him put to death. Now, they asked for him to be put to death. Who was the real power? Same as today. When people want to get in and use anti-Semitism as an emotional distraction for an academic discussion on who's really in charge behind the scenes, it's usually on purpose to distract with emotion. And that's what Judaism does. That's what blaming Jews or loving Jews does on either side. And it's thoroughly controlled by the Catholic Church. Blaming Jews or loving Jews is thoroughly controlled. On the one side, you've got hardcore leftists that say everything is wrong because of the Jews. And on the other side, you've got right-wing evangelical Christians for whom Israel can do no wrong. And the whole purpose is to froth up emotion, to have you disconnect your cognitive process so that you can't think clearly. Names, places, and dates, that's all that matters. So the death of religion was the birth of Christianity, certainly from a fundamentalist, a true fundamentalist point of view. Well, that's just letting a great opportunity go, Freeman. That's just religion. You need religion to control people. to give you power to own them, to make them do things that they would not normally do. And that's basically what came back. That's basically what was reborn via the Catholic Church. Now, in 500 AD, it wasn't the Catholic Church. 500 AD, well, actually, and let's go back to 300 AD, where you have extreme persecution of Christians. Nero and Diocletian and the Roman emperors that just couldn't slaughter, torture, kill Christians fast enough. Nero would have orgies in his garden and light the orgies into the night by drenching Christians in pitch and burning them alive. And he would get off on that, pardon the language. There was a radical change with an emperor by the name of Constantine, who at the Battle of Milvian Bridge said that he had a vision, that Jesus Christ appeared to him and said, "In this sign shall you conquer." And what sign was it? We don't really know. Roman historians say it was the Cairo, the acronym for the name of Jesus in Greek. We don't know, but apparently that may have been it. And Constantine won the Battle of Milvian Bridge and became victorious, and apparently became a Christian after that. Now, that's very controversial. Some people believe that it was just a political move. Other people believe that it was genuine. I actually, believe it or not, after spending as much time as I have on research and history and hidden history, secret history, I believe that there was something to a sincerity. There was some level of sincerity in Constantine's conversion, because one of the things that he did was he stopped a lot of pagan practices, particularly the orgies and the groves and the sacrifice of children. And if you really want to strike hard at the machine, you stop the pedocracy, what I call the pedocracy. And that's one of the things that Constantine did. Now, prior to that, Rome was very, very pagan. And Constantine did not make Christianity the state religion of Rome. That only happened 10 years later with Theodosius I. He was the one, saw how well it worked for Constantine. He made Christianity the required state religion of the Roman Empire, and that's where the trouble started. Because prior to that, Rome was very pagan. Now, suddenly, magically, Rome was Christian. Well, what happened to all those pagan practices? They were adopted. It became a syncretistic mix of paganism with the trappings of Christianity. And that's, unfortunately, not to upset our Catholic brethren, that's what Roman Catholicism is. That's why so little of Roman Catholicism can be derived from the Bible. And that's also a main reason why, for centuries, the Catholic Church forbade the Bible, had people tortured and put to death just for reading the Bible, because there's a lot of Catholic control that comes from these pagan practices, from a priesthood, pilgrimages, indulgences, the idea that you can partially buy your way out of eternal damnation, buy off some of your sins, buy some of your loved ones out of purgatory. That's this whole purpose of indulgence. Indulgences exist to this very day, by the way. So this is the problem, and this is the birth of the Catholic religion, and became just a network of power. And the whole confessional, the idea that you have to confess your sins to a priest, not biblical, very Catholic, and an essential part of the power of the Catholic Church is the abuse of the confessional. And the function of the priesthood and the celibacy of the priesthood caused problems from the beginning all the way through to today. Also very, very pagan practice. Not biblical in any way. on confessing sins, says in the book of James, confess your faults one to another. And so confession and the priesthood. There's no reason for a priesthood, no reason for middlemen. We Christians believe that there's only one intercessor, and that's Jesus Christ. So you've got this conflicting power structure here. Now, with the fall of the Roman Empire, you no longer have the ability of emperors to force their will to be done, use coercive force, have soldiers on every street corner. With the fall of the Roman Empire and the birth of Roman Catholicism, you did not have a standing army anymore. And you had the Bishop of Bishops, eventually being the Pontifex Maximus, the bridge builder, the Pope, the Holy Father, the Vicar of Christ, needing to use the armies of other countries. And this was a bit of a problem. But the control was there, and the control was through the clergy. And the priesthood in the countries, especially in Europe at the time, all owned their loyalty to Rome. And this became a problem for kings and queens. They had basically an insurgency, their entire religious hierarchy that had more power than they did. They could have their subjects tortured and killed for any reason. But the only thing that could override that is a subject's belief that they were going to hell if they didn't do what the Pope wanted them to do. And that was more powerful. And you've got priests and bishops and cardinals in your country that have zero loyalty to you, the king. That was an even bigger problem. And what happens when they change places? They brought with them a lot of money and property, just like any lord. The Pope is like a king, and bishops and cardinals are like lords. Well, how do you pick a bishop? How do you pick a cardinal? You, the king, you don't. The Pope in Rome picks them, and he almost always picks them outside of your country to ensure that he has no loyalty and no roots towards you, and all the loyalty towards Rome. This is called investiture. And it's a constant problem, was a constant source of conflict, particularly in England. There were several investiture controversies. King Henry, King John, and Thomas Becket, who was supposedly a good English Catholic, who was English first and Catholic second. As soon as he became Archbishop of Canterbury, completely turned around and showed full loyalty to Rome, to the anguish of, I think it was Henry II, anguish of the king. So upset that he said, someone please do something about this insurgent priest. And supposedly that was the reason why Becket was killed. Some knights took it upon themselves to kill him, and they really played it up in the aftermath. Was he killed at the altar? Was he slaughtered like a good Catholic martyr? But subsequently, in a similar investiture controversy, King John gave the crown of England to the papal legate, not even to the Pope himself. England has been owned ever since. Well, really, they've always been owned. But when John gave the crown to the papal legate, it was official. So you've got this massive power. Kings can't make a move without asking permission from the Pope, whether it's Henry and getting a divorce, starting wars, committing to the Crusades. And by the way, the first Crusades were in Europe against Christians. Nobody knows that. Against Christians like the Valdenses, the Vaudois, the Albigenses in northern Italy and southern France, who were maintaining the Bible and were a threat to clergy. And the first Crusades were to wipe out the Valdenses, and they did in horrible fashions. Horrible fashions. So you have this oppressive system with very little access to the Bible. You have people who think they're Christians who have no idea what the Bible says because the Bible is mandated to be kept in Latin and only touched by clergy. And this precipitated, well, there were several revolts throughout history. All of them were crushed. And that's usually done by burning them alive. And if they were found with any handwritten Bibles, Wycliffe is a great example. Wycliffe and his Lollards, back in, I believe, it was the 1300s, who was a Roman Catholic priest who knew the scriptures and said, hey, there's a lot of stuff going on that is evil, it's unbiblical, and we want to get back to our Christian roots. And whenever Wycliffe was arrested multiple times, miraculously escaped prosecution. One time there was an earthquake that set him free from being prosecuted. But when his Lollards were captured with their hand-copied Bibles, they were burned alive. The Bibles were tied around their necks and they were burned alive. And this was the state of affairs for so-called Christendom, Christianity. And I want to make a clear delineation between Christianity, Christendom in general, and Roman Catholicism, because there's a lot of mixing up and a lot of bleeding over, no pun intended, for things like the Crusades and the Inquisition. Those are Catholic. Those are in no way Christian. And unfortunately, many times, the victims were Christians. John Fox's Book of Martyrs, a massive volume, cover to cover, on how Christians were murdered by the Inquisition, how Christians were murdered in Crusades. So there's a dramatic difference, a marked difference. And it is this religion that is the source of control. And I left out, again, this play between Jews and Romans. It's the very same one in the crucifixion of Christ. The Jewish leadership went to Pontius Pilate with their yarmulkes in hand, begging for Rome to kill this upstart rabbi. And that's been the hierarchy through to this very day. You're looking at things and you think you see a Jewish name and a Jewish face. It's just there as a placeholder to get your ire up so that you miss the real target. So let me pause and make sure I still got you. Still got you, Freeman?
Oh yeah.
Good.
I am enraptured here.
Good. Okay. I just want to do a quick sound check there. So
Right.
Back to 1517, you've got Martin Luther, who was an Augustinian monk, a priest who knew his Latin, knew his Bible, and had seen these indulgences. Now, the popes were, boy, I'll tell you, there were some pretty bad examples. And Alexander number 6, Alexander the Sixth, a Borgia, the name should come up, Rodrigo de Borgia, Spaniard. That's the name that should be infamous in every household. Instead, if anybody knows Borgia, it's Lucrezia Borgia. Lucrezia Borgia was a puppet. That was the daughter. That was the illegitimate daughter of a pope. Same thing with Cesare. Cesare was a cardinal and a general and the illegitimate son of Rodrigo de Borgia, Pope Alexander VI. Infamous. And there are many historians that believe that they were incestuous as well as infamous, and Lucrezia was thrown around between Cesare and Rodrigo. One of the reasons why she's brought up as the poisoner is because it was the Borgia family that were the real poisoners, and she was just a patsy. So the abuses of the popes, long and much history. And it was another Medici pope, Leo X, Giovanni de' Medici, the Medicis of Florence. Bankers. Oh, should I back up real quick and talk about banking? Bankers. Who owns banking? Who controls banking? Who birthed banking? Not the Jews. The Romans. It was the Templars, the ultimate special forces, back in the 10th century, 9th and 10th century, 11th, 12th century, The Templars who created usury banking. Because again, this thing of pilgrimages that has nothing to do with Christianity, it's very pagan. The idea that you earn your way into salvation by good works, by going to Israel and Jerusalem, going to where Jesus walked. And by the way, it was the steps, apparently, that Jesus climbed, the bloody steps. They were transported magically to Rome. There's so much. Oh my goodness, there's so much of these traditions that are just completely made up, obviously completely made up. Pilgrimages. Well, the problem is that the devout Roman Catholics, holy Roman Catholics, as they go on these pilgrimages, well, they were getting robbed, they were getting killed, they were getting beat up, not just by Muslims, but by brigands. And they needed protection. And the Templars provided that protection at a cost, of course. You would turn in your valuables to them, and they would give you a special ciphered receipt. Now, the Templars had roots in the Holy Land. They had been fighting and dying there for years. They had been fighting against the Muslim secret society known as the Assassins, and then they became allies with the Assassins and shared secret knowledge on how to kill without showing any trace. And the secret knowledge of the Assassins went back to the Essenes, the secret society that may have been connected to John the Baptist. He may have been a part of the Essenes. Also a Gnostic secret society, although John the Baptist is considered even by fundamentalist Christians as a Christian and not a Gnostic. So the Templars would provide this ciphered receipt, and you could go on your pilgrimage, and when you emerged from your pilgrimage, you came back to any other group of Templars and give them the receipt. And only they could decipher it, and they returned your valuables with a percentage. And this was the birth of usury banking, and it made the Templars filthy rich. Filthy rich. Richer than many nations. And so there was a lot of concern, a lot of envy, particularly with some of the practices as a secret society. How many places, Freeman, have you seen a double-headed eagle? Certainly on the resuscitated flag of the Russian Federation. That's an ancient symbol. You know where it traces back to? It traces back to the Templars. It's a Templar symbol. Why two heads? It goes back to the two-headed god of Janus of pagan Rome. Now, in fairness, the god Janus had two heads for the seasons, incoming and outgoing seasons. But actually, there's another meaning, and it was much more so for the two-headed eagle. The eagle is the symbol of Roman conquest. It was changed around 300 AD to the dragon, of all things. But there's two heads, one for the uninitiated and the other for the inner circle, the initiated. That's why there's two to this very day. And so some of these secret practices were being outed about the Templars. Ooh, the Templars blasphemed Jesus Christ. They spit on the crucifix. They stepped on it. They had secret orgies. They had basements, cellars full of untold wealth. A lot of this was true. One of the reasons it was true is not necessarily because they worshiped Baphomet or Satan, but because they were heretics themselves. They were Johannites. They believed that this early Gnostic, this early Essene, well, there, to them he was a Gnostic, John the Baptist was the true Messiah. That's why beheading was so special to them. That's why they felt it was okay to blaspheme Jesus Christ, because he was an imposter. And Johannism is this worship of John the Baptist as the Messiah. And so these rumors continued to spread until the only king that I am aware of, Philippe le Bel of France, Philip IV, the only king to stand up to the Catholic Church, to subvert the Catholic Church for a very short period of time, was able to do so. It was Philippe le Bel who forced the Vatican to move from Rome to Avignon, France, for a short period of time, 70 years. It was Philippe le Bel who used these rumors as the fuel to suppress the Templars on Friday the 13th in October of 1307. Black Friday, unlucky Friday. The Templars went underground. They weren't completely wiped out. Jacques de Molay was the last Grand Master, and he was captured, tortured, and killed. But they went underground. You know where they went underground? Switzerland. They exist to this day. They are the Swiss guard that guards the Pope. One of the reasons why Switzerland is always respected in every conflict as supposedly neutral, as the home of banking, is because that's where the Templars are, and they're deeply feared to this day. Okay, so fast forward back to Martin Luther and the sins and the crimes of the papacy. All these popes, Borgia, Medici, do as I say, not as I do. Just evil, licentious, orgies, parties. How it is that a pope living like a king could bankrupt himself. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what the Medici Pope had done. And needed more money because of his crazy parties, giving away elephants and lions and parades and living like kings. Orgies with children in them at his ascension ceremony. They had little naked boys jumping out of desserts as the culmination of the party. He was bedridden because of venereal disease. So certainly not the vicar of Christ. And it was in an early mission that Martin Luther was sent by his superior, by his Augustinian superior, to Rome that really woke him up. To see the Mass being celebrated where priests were mocking the parishioners in Latin, not being solemn in their Masses. When he went into Rome, he found brothels for priests with other priests, priests with other men, priests with women. It really shocked and upset him. He was pretty naive. But it didn't put him over the top. What put him over the top was this push by the Medici Pope, Leo X, to get more money for his parties. Now Leo couched this in terms of fixing up St. Peter's. But the problem was he really spent all his money. And by this time, many of the kings and queens were getting cagey about this requirement to go crusade. Go crusade. The money would come back, and it would never get used for what it was supposed to be used for. Meanwhile, the king and queen were in big trouble with their own armies and their own citizens. So they were starting to get wise and not obeying the popes when they were being commanded to crusade. And so Leo had to rely upon indulgences, this idea that if you're afraid for your soul, that you can buy your way somewhat out of hell or purgatory. And a favorite scam was for those who had lost loved ones. And of course, the infant mortality was high throughout human history up until recently. And unfortunately, it's still high. But particularly in the medieval time. And this was devastating to parents. And you lost a child, lost an infant, lost a baby. And you've had these priests. At this time, there were the watchdogs, the attack dogs of the Catholic Church were the Dominicans. Dominicans like Johann Tetzel in Germany. They would go around square to city square, town square, and they'd actually put on a play where the goal was to scare the peasants, who had, many of them were illiterate and none of them knew what the Bible said. That for instance, the infant that they just lost was in suffering in purgatory. But if they gave the Dominican friar a year's wage, the Pope would pray their infant out of purgatory and into heaven. and they would get a receipt for that. And when Augustinian monk Martin Luther saw this and knew, because he knew Latin and had access to the Bible, saw how egregious it was and saw how this was bankrupting many innocent peasants, he was furious and wrote 95 paragraphs on how it was an outrage if the Pope had the ability to forgive some sin. Why wouldn't he forgive all sin? Why was it necessary to pay him? Why would he put limits on it? Those are just some of the examples of the 95 Theses. Now, he wrote them originally in Latin, and he meant for them as a discussion. He was a professor at Wittenberg, University of Wittenberg. And he posted them on Wittenberg Cathedral. By the way, he posted them on November 1st, All Saints' Day, on All Saints Cathedral. He did not post them on All Hallows' Eve, October 31st. That's a misnomer that is propagated, unfortunately, by the Catholic Church. He posted it on November 1st, All Saints' Day, on All Saints Cathedral in Wittenberg. But unfortunately, his students loved him. And they also spoke Latin because they were his students. And so they very quickly translated his 95 Theses. And something had occurred some 40 years before, not too far away in Germany, just 2 days as the crow flies. Johannes Gutenberg had adapted the printing press to use movable type. You could set individual letters in a frame and set up whole sheets. Now, prior to this, you basically had to scribe or carve entire sheets in a single mold. And so the printing process took forever. But with the movable type printing press of Johannes Gutenberg, wow, it went fast. You could create a single page, take it apart, create a next page, take it apart. Now, anything in writing spread like wildfire. And that's what happened to the 95 Theses. Before he could even realize he was in trouble, it had reached Rome. So this started off as an attempt at reform of the Catholic Church. But after several examinations, several diets, it was obvious not only was Luther not going to be acknowledged or answered, he was going to be condemned, and if he wasn't careful, was going to be assassinated. And at one point, he had a protector, Frederick III, Frederick the Wise of Saxony, an elector for the Holy Roman Empire. The Holy Roman Emperor had a college of electors, and Frederick was one of them, very powerful position, who loved Luther and basically kidnapped him to keep him safeguarded during this time, because it was obvious that the Catholic Church was just going to have him killed and crushed. He was just causing too much trouble, particularly with this stuff with the Bible. And when he was imprisoned in Wartburg Castle, not in prison, but kept for safekeeping, holed up for safekeeping, he had nothing to do, and he had a humanist friend. Now, humanism at this time was not what it is today. Humanism at this time was the idea that there was something bigger than the whims of tyrants, that there was a rule of law, and particularly the rule of the Bible, that should guide men, and that kings and popes should not just go on their whims, whatever suited them. That was what humanism stood for at that time. It's been since subverted and controlled. And now it's considered not just secular, but sometimes Luciferian and satanic. His humanist friend Desiderius Erasmus was a famed translator, had manuscripts in Greek and Latin of the Bible, the Vulgate, Jerome's Vulgate. And so Luther spent his time with Erasmus's manuscripts trying to put a Bible in the vulgar tongue, which was absolutely forbidden. You tried to translate the Bible into the common language so the average citizen could read it. You were put to death. You were tortured and put to death. So he would actually dress up, disguise himself as a lord, as a knight George, Junker Jorg, and go into the taverns and the pubs and listen to how people spoke. Martin Luther's first German Bible was, but basically today would be a paraphrase using slang, whatever it was that the people would understand. A lot of people get wrapped up into the Shakespearean Elizabethan English of the King James. It's not what colloquial language Bibles were meant to be. And that, more than his 95 Theses, just tore asunder the Catholic Church and started this movement of Christian versus Catholic, a protest, a reformation, but not of the Catholic Church, of Christianity. And it spread like wildfire. It spread like absolute wildfire. On through France, Spain, England, and threatened the control of the Catholic Church and required the Catholic.
Oh, we just lost you there, Johnny. Oh, I have so many things to add.
Check, test.
Okay, there you are.
Check, test. Okay.
Yeah.
Got me?
Yes. So it required the Catholic Church?
Yeah, to fight. And no longer could the Catholic Church fight with the fires of the Inquisition, where if you found a Bible, you burned it, and it took years to make another Bible. It was written by hand, copied by hand. Well, now with the movable type printing press, you can no longer fight that battle. You can no longer burn the Bibles and burn the Christians. You can no longer do that. It was required a new, much more insidious tactic, which the counselor of King Henry VIII, Thomas Wolsey, Cardinal Wolsey, called learning against learning. And basically, it was creating an alternate reality. Owning so-called science and spinning it to discredit the Bible. All of this controversy, spinning globe versus flat earth, young earth versus old earth, Darwin, dinosaurs, all of this has its nexus in a Roman Catholic agenda to discredit the Bible that could no longer be kept under wraps and now had to be discredited so that everyone would still return to the Pope as the arbiter of their souls. And this is the interesting thing about all these other controversies over evolution and flat earth and astronomy and space and moon landing. It has its genesis in the Catholic Church's desire to discredit the Bible. And just for fun, let me take a minute and pull up the number of Roman Catholics or Jesuit-trained Catholics involved in NASA. I'll give you some examples. Tim Hughes behind Elon Musk, and that guy's about as phony as they come. There's no such thing as an Elon Musk. I guarantee you there's no birth certificate with the name Elon Musk on it. Tim Hughes graduated from Georgetown, pardon me. The man behind, I think it was both a lawyer and a financier behind SpaceX. Alvin Drew, Catholic Jesuit-trained astronaut. He's also black. Edgar Mitchell. He was a member of the De Molay Secret Society for Young Boys, as was Bill Clinton,
Walt Disney,
John Wayne, Walt Disney, Walter Cronkite. He's also a Freemason. Buzz Aldrin, Freemason, said Mass on the moon. Frank Borman, De Molay for Boys. Jack King, Boston College, the voice of NASA. Boston College is a Jesuit school. Jack Swigert, test pilot, Apollo 13, Regis High School, the Jesuit high school. Jeanette Epps, interesting person. A twin, worked at the CIA, and almost became an astronaut. And this whole thing with NASA and twins, very creepy. Neil Armstrong, De Molay for Boys. Paul Scully Power, Knight of Columbus. Tom Mueller, SpaceX, rocket engineer, Loyola Marymount. Vance Brand, De Molay for Boys. A very long list of astronauts and administrators. People had no idea. Why are they involved? Go ahead.
Okay, we're coming up on the break here, and I wanted to just reemphasize that what you have just pointed out. I mean, that conclusion before NASA, the idea that everything that we're seeing, all of the misinformation, as you say, flat Earth, round Earth, have we been to the moon? All of it, all these conspiracy theorists creating domestic terrorism, is to discredit the press of the Bible. And now we're at the point where the Guggenheim print is the internet. I mean, how much faster could it be, right, than the World Wide Web? No longer do you even have to set the type press, right, and get worldwide coverage on your thing. So, of course, now anyone putting information out is going to be classified as a domestic terrorist. The recent appearance of Donald Trump at the Turning Point USA's teen summit, they put the double-headed eagle holding golf clubs up behind Donald Trump. Now, of course, that is, as we didn't mention, is the sign of the Scottish Rite Freemasons.
Who
And
happily traced themselves back to the Templars.
exactly. And the last time we spoke, we suddenly got a Jesuit pope, and they had exonerated the Knights Templar of all wrongdoing because Benedict found a 600-year misplaced document that set it all straight. So all of a sudden, we had this pope who announced that he was hunting down the Illuminati, and he instead found a 600-year-old misplaced document that exonerates the Knights Templar from all wrongdoing. And that didn't get a whole lot of coverage. And when you look to this puzzle, folks, and you look for Illuminati defined, you will find that you're looking at people saying it's the Club of Rome. It's the baby eaters. It's a nebulous statement, as Johnny has said, and it is misguided and misdirects you from your target. Who is talking about what Johnny CIRUCCI is talking? When you hear the word Illuminati and you don't hear the word Jesuit, then you should know that somebody doesn't have their information straight. And I am so glad that Johnny has put all of this together in Illuminati Unmasked, Secret History, and the Eaters of Children to bring all this information out with names, dates, lists. And you can hear in Johnny the passion of this history and bringing it forward. So I have been just completely amazed and enthralled this entire time. And I'm so glad that we have been getting this information out because it's so critical for people to understand the depths and the right targets and who and where and why, instead of all of the well, Trump derangement syndrome going on, where if you bring up Epstein, the first reply you are most likely are going to hear is, well, Trump was on the Lolita Express. Well, yeah, there were a lot of people on there. Let's not get caught up in the game. The game is the master of the mind. The Jesuit gameplay, when you're in a university, you're dealing with the Club of Rome, you're dealing with your bank system, you're dealing with Rome, and all roads lead to Rome, as Johnny is showing us over and over again. So I'm sorry to Johnny to have paused you at this point, because I'm just sitting back enraptured and loving it, but we got to pull out somewhat of a time frame here. So
You're the host, Freeman. You're the host.
Yeah, hey, I have so many things I can't wait to talk to you about, and I'm just blown away. Did you see that Trump seal with the double-headed eagle?
I'm going to look it up now. I'm going to look it up.
Look that up. It was at the
That's
USA
crazy.
Team Summit. Two-headed eagle with golf clubs for, of course, the Teen Student Action Summit. And so, guys, we're going to talk about in the next hour about how the minds of our children have been taken over. We're going to look at the Club of Rome deeper. We're going to get into this Illuminati. Myron Fagan said that it was the Council on Foreign Relations back in the 70s. You know, when you start to dig into this, you got to go through so many layers to get to the bottom. And the problem that we have right now is, even if we get it right, it's almost impossible to know that we've gotten it right, because beyond the Guggenheim print, this World Wide Web can now push anything at once. And as we've seen, they're going to utilize these current threats, which we are also going to talk about, these shooters, and to guide a pre-crime situation, censorship, back into monitoring all people and every action and what they're doing, and being able to manipulate all of that. And this is all coming forward, but yet we still have this nebulous villain that we can't identify. And I think Johnny CIRUCCI is on the scene here and pulling it forward for us. So johnnycirucci.com, of course, it's linked right here on freemantv.com. Any other ways people can find you and get your books, Johnny?
That's it. They're directly out of Amazon. So Illuminati Unmasked, Secret History, and Eaters of Children, all out of Amazon. Giovanni Augustino CIRUCCI, nickname is Johnny. And Johnny at johnnycirucci.com is my email. Let's see. I think the Giovanni CIRUCCI name is has my YouTube, my surviving backup YouTube, but most of that you can go right through the right through the website there. There's a Facebook, there's a Twitter. I think I should all be connected there on the website, Freeman. Thanks for asking.